trying to give us 384 deaths due to drug-induced homicides from around the city. And they didn't care that we didn't have nothing to do with all of those deaths. All they wanted to do was dump all the deaths off on somebody for all of the deaths that's happening in the city of Chicago. That wasn't right to put that on 29th Street. You know what I'm saying? We didn't do that.
The man who opened today's program is named Lynn Barkdale, and in case you're wondering, yes, he's related to David Barkdale, the notorious founder and leader of the gang that would eventually be known as the Black Disciples. According to Lynn Barkdale, David was his mother's uncle, but he wasn't a BD. Lynn was a high-ranking MC, short for the Mickey Cobras, the street gang that dominates the Dearborn Homes housing project, located on Chicago's South Side, on 16 acres of land between 27th through 30th and State Streets. The Dearborn Homes is one of only 2 housing projects that still exist from the State Street corridor, which included other CHA developments like the Robert Taylor Homes, Stateway Gardens, Harold Ick Keyes Homes, and Hillard Homes, which are also still standing. In 2006, Lynn Barkdale was arrested along with his then-girlfriend, Tashika Sledge, a Chicago police officer. According to a Chicago Tribune article, originally published on June 22, 2006, in a blow meant to disrupt drug sales in a South Side housing complex at the center of Chicago's fentanyl crisis, federal authorities on Wednesday lodged conspiracy charges against 47 members and associates of the street gang that controls narcotic sales there. Hundreds of police and federal agents moved against the Mickey Cobras just after dawn in a sweep of more than 24 people with links to the gang, including a Chicago police officer, who allegedly tried to help gang members stay a step ahead of the law. The gang's leader, James Austin, 29, was taken into custody in Ohio, and charged in what authorities described as a sophisticated drug operation that saw heroin, crack cocaine and fentanyl, distributed at the Dearborn Homes housing project. Cook County Medical Examiner, Edmund Donahue, on Wednesday said, fentanyl has been discovered in the blood of 87 overdose victims, who have died since spring 2005. As toxicology reports are completed on overdose deaths, the number of fatalities linked to fentanyl continues to grow. Authorities said they did not believe the conspiracy case would cap the supply of fentanyl coming into Chicago, but they said they had begun to dismantle a street gang with a stranglehold on the housing complex, where much of it may have been sold. We felt an obligation to get out and do what we could to get this fentanyl off the street, said Tim Ogden, Associate Special Agent in charge of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's Chicago field office. The DEA has also been investigating how much fentanyl is being manufactured in illegal laboratories. Authorities noted the investigation was well underway a year ago, but accelerated after the many fentanyl-related deaths, some of which can be attributed to gang members inadvertently mixing the drug in lethal doses. Some victims may have looked for the powerful painkiller that is many times more powerful than heroin, while some may have unknowingly purchased it, authorities have said. The gang offered 8 brands of heroin at the housing complex, with names such as Drop Dead and Lethal Injection, said First Assistant U.S. Attorney Gary Shapiro. They carry niche marketing to its extreme, Shapiro said. It struck everybody that had anything to do with this case, in light of everything that happened in this community, particularly in the last 6 or 8 months, how cold-blooded the marketing seemed to be. In the criminal complaint, federal authorities said they have twice seized quantities of fentanyl from the gang this year. Chicago Police Superintendent Philip Klein said, authorities have not ruled out drug-induced homicide charges for some members of the gang, if deaths can be linked to their products. The last time fentanyl was seized from the gang was in April, the complaint states, when authorities learned that heroin was being mixed in a building in the 2900 block of South State Street. They arrested Jerome Johnson, 21, of Chicago, an alleged shift supervisor for the gang that worked with heroin brands known as Penicillin and Reaper. Johnson told authorities that the recipe for Reaper was a mix of heroin, a sleep aid, lactose and a drug meant to treat leg cramps. But when agents tested drugs seized from Johnson, they found more than 190 grams of what turned out to be fentanyl. Authorities said, Operation SNAKEPIT netted members at all levels of the gang, including Austin's assistant, Johnny Shannon, 27, of Chicago, and 2 members of the gang's board of directors. Chicago police officer Tashika Sledge, 29, also was charged with providing law enforcement information to her boyfriend, Lynn Barkdale. Barkdale, another leader of the gang, also was charged.
If I had it all over to do again, I can't say that I'll do it the same. Because, a lot was lost, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of bonds was broken, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think I could go through all that again. You know what I mean? I probably would do some things different, but some things I'll do the same, you know what I'm saying? It'll be what it'll be. And When we wound up catching the federal case, it was because, one of the guys caught a case years before us. He gave him a little bit too much information, um, broke down a few too many things, and it led to other guys years later getting caught up.
Lynn Barkdale was referring to Cornell Green, one of 4 Mickey Cobra kings, who held the rank right below Emperor of the MCs. I'm about to tell the story of Cornell Green snitching, but before I do, please smash that like button and subscribe to the Cartoon News Network. It's free for you, and it's a big help to an up-and-coming YouTube channel like ours. According to a Chicago Tribune article, originally published in September 2001, a high-ranking gang member who provided important information to the government, but then mysteriously quit helping, was sentenced Friday to 30 years in prison for operating a large-scale heroin operation on Chicago's South Side for 8 years. Cornell Green, who held the second highest rank of king in the Mickey Cobra street gang, could have received half that sentence if he hadn't stopped cooperating with authorities in recent weeks, federal prosecutors said. Green, 41, formerly of Country Club Hills, was among 15 Mickey Cobra's members or associates who were sentenced Friday to varying prison terms by U.S. District Judge Suzanne Conlon for their roles in the heroin operation. Robert Thomas, 30, the only one of the 15 defendants to go to trial, also received a 30-year sentence. Co-defendant, Kamaruddin Soamimi, 31, convicted of being a major heroin supplier to the gang, was sentenced to 14 years. Prosecutors, Theodore Chung and Sean Berkowitz said that every day between 1993 and early 2001, the Green-led operation sold hundreds of dime bags of heroin, 0.2 to 0.3 of a gram, retailing for $10 apiece. By selling heroin with high purity, Green built a loyal following who continued to seek him out, even after he frequently moved his drug sites in an attempt to elude authorities, Chung said. Green street sellers used cell phones to keep customers posted on their changing locations, authorities said. When the Drug Enforcement Administration secured one of the cell phones, agents tried to set up an undercover buy on the phone, but couldn't, because of the constant incoming calls from customers, the prosecutors said. After he and the others were indicted in May, Green pleaded guilty, agreed to cooperate and provided critical testimony against Thomas, who was convicted of supervising street sellers. But in recent weeks, for unknown reasons to prosecutors, Green quit cooperating. Richard Boyke, one of Green's lawyers, said his client stopped cooperating for a variety of reasons, a lot to do with his family. Boyke read a letter aloud from Green's mother, asking the judge for mercy. "I taught my children to work for what they wanted," the mother of 16 wrote. As part of his guilty plea, Green agreed to forfeit $1 million in assets, including his house, furnished with hand-carved Italian furniture and a home theater, as well as several luxury vehicles and fur coats, one with his gang nickname, King Bread, stitched inside. Dearborn was the first Chicago housing project built after World War II, as housing for blacks, on part of the Federal Street slum, within an area called the Black Belt. It was the start of the Chicago Housing Authority's post-war use of high-rise buildings, to accommodate more units at a lower overall cost, and when it opened in 1950, it was the first CHA project to have elevators. According to the book, Almighty Black Pea Stone Nation, The Rise, Fall, and Resurgence of a Nation, around 1970, Henry Cogwell, better known as Mickey, met with Chicago Mafia boss, Joseph Little Caesar DeVarco. Through his association with the Chicago outfit, Mickey and the Cobras opened up the first large-scale heroin drug dealing operation in 3 buildings located in the Robert Taylor Homes housing project that they controlled called The Hole. This operation expanded to the Dearborn Homes when Mickey and his family moved into the projects. Renovation of the Dearborn Homes began in 2009. According to a Chicago Sun-Times article published in May 2018, a former Chicago cop, who was sentenced to federal prison for leaking sensitive police information to her gang leader boyfriend, was still able to land a job with the state of Illinois investigating doctors, despite her criminal background, records show. In 2006, Officer Tashika Miner was arrested in a drug investigation called Operation SNAKEPIT, which targeted sales of deadly fentanyl-laced heroin in the Chicago Housing Authority's Dearborn Homes public housing complex on the South Side. Miner, whose last name was Sledge then, was giving Mickey Cobra's leader Lynn Barkdale access to a police database to help him determine which members of the gang were under surveillance, according to prosecutors. Working for the Chicago Police Department, she had patrolled the Dearborn Homes, where she began her relationship with Barksdale. She helped protect his drug operations in the complex, prosecutors said. At one point, Barksdale was stopped by the police while driving Miner's SUV, and they found her badge in the vehicle. Miner, now 41, was sentenced to 10 months in federal prison in 2007, after pleading guilty to participating in a drug conspiracy. In 2016, the State Department of Financial and Professional Regulation hired her as a health services investigator with access to sensitive Blue Cross, Blue Shield insurance information, state records show. She has worked in the Medical Investigations Unit, which conducts investigations that involve doctors, chiropractors and other medical professionals, the records show. A state database shows Miner continues to work for the agency. She makes $55,300 a year. Miner could not be reached for comment. In her 2016 job application, Miner gave this information on a self-disclosure of a criminal history form. 2007, conspiracy. Chicago, Illinois, pled guilty. But a job screener for the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation never told anyone about the disclosure, according to the State Office of Executive Inspector General, in a report that was highlighted in a recent state report. Ms. Miner sailed through the hiring process without any review being done of her criminal history, in light of the investigatory position that she was being hired into, until after she began employment at IDFPR, the report said. The Inspector General said, the job screener's inaction, malfeasance, resulted in her receiving counseling about evaluating the background of job candidates. After Miner was hired, supervisors in the State Department of Financial and Professional Regulation learned of her criminal background, but let her keep working there, according to the Inspector General. In 2019, Lynn Barkdale was released from prison. He's earned his CDL license and drives trucks for a living.
You know, you got to understand it's still an organization. So you have to do things by what is called law. You know what I'm saying? And you have to stand on these things and know these principles, and you have to actually teach them and live them. So you living them and teaching them, and you run into people who are misusing these things, and you have to forcefully take situations out of their hand where they are dictating the pace to guys.